Well, we finally have some interesting news out of the Diddy trial. The jury has sent a letter, a note to the judge, and saying that they have unanimously agreed on charge 2, 3, 4, and 5, and they are hung on charge 1. What does this tell us? Well, it tells us a lot. It tells us that they have found Diddy guilty of at least one of the 5 charges. Because if they didn't, there would be no reason for charge 1. No reason to be questioning the RICO charges. So I think it's safe to say that, depending on which crime they have found him guilty of, he's probably going to prison. Now, let's start with the breaking news. The jury has sent a note to the judge that they have reached verdicts on count 2, 3, 4, and 5, but will remain deadlocked on count 1, which is the RICO charge, which could send him to prison for a very long time. Contrary to this report, RICO, which has a 10-year minimum, life maximum, is in fact not the most serious charge. Charge 2 and 4 are for violating 18 U.S. Code 1591 and carry a minimum of 15 years to life sentence. Here's this from Fox News.
Willis, I can tell you jurors were unable to reach that unanimous consensus on racketeering conspiracy, the most serious charge in this case.
It isn't the most serious charge in this case.
If jurors had found Diddy guilty on that charge, he would have been sentenced to life in prison, but we are going to stay out here at the courthouse, continue to monitor these developments. Jurors have now been deliberating for about 13 hours between yesterday and today. Will, I want to send it back over to you.
All right, thank you, CB. I just want to clarify the top line once again. So on count 1, racketeering conspiracy, which, as you point out, can carry with it a potential life sentence, the jury has not been able to reach a consensus. But on counts 2, 3, 4, and 5.
So it's important. Count 2 is trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion. Count 3 is transportation to engage in prostitution. Count 4 is trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion. Which is interesting. It's the same charge. And count 5 is transportation to engage in prostitution. What's interesting is, here's the thing. Here's what I think they're confused about. First of all, any one of these charges outside of maybe the prostitution, the prostitution, he's not going to prison. If he's only guilty of, hiring a hoe, he's not going to go do any more time. I would find it very unlikely. The charge 1, which is racketeering, this is the RICO charge. You need to be guilty of at least 2 of these other charges to get the racketeering charge. So if they are unsure about count 1, that means they have definitely found him guilty on at least 1 or 2 of these other charges, you would think. Now, sometimes people say, hey, be careful. Juries don't always act, rationally. But the fact of the matter is, if he was not guilty of 3 of the 4 of these charges, they're not going to be considering the racketeering charge. Is how I understand it. And here's the updated report. The judge has now sent the jurors home, meaning we will not get a decision on verdict 1 until at least 9 a.m. tomorrow morning, which I suspect we will get before 10 a.m. tomorrow morning, which means I will have an updated video ready for you at that time. The jury in Diddy Combs' trial has reached a verdict on 4 of the 5 charges, about 12 hours of deliberation in, but are stuck on a single count. At 4:05 on Tuesday, barely 12 hours after they began deliberating the 8 weeks of evidence, the jury sent the judge a note that said they could not reach a verdict on the racketeering conspiracy, the first and most controversial charge. The charge applies to the notion that Diddy ran a criminal enterprise, aided by staff to entrap and take advantage of women. The jurors cannot agree on whether or not it sticks, with jurors on both sides telling the court they are unpersuadable, meaning they are completely hung on this charge. They have reached a verdict in 4 of the other 5 charges, though. Trafficking and transportation, prostitution. Those 4 charges relate specifically to 2 women, Cassie Ventura and another ex-girlfriend, who used the pseudonym Jane. The disgraced, after a tense hearing on Tuesday, the judge ordered the jury back into deliberations, to reach a verdict on count one. A tense-looking Diddy was surrounded by lawyers with his children and mother watching nearby. Now, since then, the judge has told jurors to continue deliberating after they said they could not reach a verdict on count one. Shortly after that, they sent a note to the court saying they will continue deliberating on Wednesday at 9 a.m. Eastern, so 8 a.m. Central Time. Racketeering conspiracy is the most serious charge that he faces. Again, that's not true, and carries a penalty of up to life in prison. Now, what's interesting is, at 4:50 today, they were dismissed for the day. But earlier today, they asked for more information on Cassie Ventura's text messages. And that's the really interesting part. So in the Cassie Ventura, they had asked if to see these text messages. And most specifically, the text message where Cassie said, "Hey, when can we do another freak off?" My guess is that they may have found him guilty with this other woman, but not Cassie Ventura. Now, I think it's safe to say that they have found him guilty on at least one of these charges, because quite frankly, again, if they found him guilty on none of the other charges, well, if they found him not guilty, then they're not going to have anything to discuss on charge one. Here's a little bit longer of an update.
Dana, well, right now, from our courtroom producer, it seems, and bear in mind, there are a lot of moving parts right now coming from inside the courthouse, but right now it seems like the judge is going to instruct the jury to continue deliberations and emphasize that they should try to reach a verdict. And just to unpack what...
The reason that is because this jury is the most equipped to actually decide, if he can... to decide on that charge. They've heard all the evidence on all the other charges. Depending on what he gets found guilty or not guilty of, that, they may not be able to try him again on the RICO.
Got us to this point. The judge, he looked at proposals from both prosecutors and the defense. The defense pointed out that there's a lot of material and the jurors have been very efficient, but they didn't reach a verdict on count one. And the defense thinks jurors don't need much help and they shouldn't be given a push to move along. The judge also asked the defense what it thought about the juror note that said jurors were unpersuadable on count one of racketeering conspiracy. The judge suggests that he would just tell them to go back in, continue to deliberate and not address their concern. The prosecutors argue that doing so would be asking for a repeat of the duty of jurors to reach a verdict. And so there was a lot of back and forth.
There's a lot that could go wrong or right in this scenario for Diddy. If they were on the fence, 70-30, 80-20 towards a not guilty verdict, then it's likely this push will just get those other two to fold. But if the true is otherwise, if the case is otherwise, that most of them wanted to convict and there were a few not wanting to convict, then pushing them back in there going into the 4th of July weekend is going to push them to convict.
Between this and the notes we're getting from the courtroom, they're coming at rapid fire. But at this point, I can tell you the latest that we're hearing and we're reading from our producers inside is that it seems like right now the judge is going to instruct the jury to go back and continue deliberations. But I just got another note, and if I may read this to our viewers. We just learned from our producer, the defense wants to ask the jury at the end of the day tomorrow, rather than now, if they would want to stay over the 3rd. I'm not sure what that means. We're going to need to get more clarification.
Well, I can tell you what that means. They don't want them to rush to a decision when faced with giving up a holiday weekend. They could have asked them today maybe, but now if they wait till tomorrow, the 2nd, we're still several days out from the 4th of July. I'm sure it's weighing on their minds, but it's only Tuesday. The 4th is until Friday. Maybe some people have travel plans, Wednesday, Thursday, but it's going to be tough. There's going to be a lot of pressure here to get a unanimous decision
on that, but the defense has said they do not want jurors to feel rushed. The defense has said they don't want jurors to feel rushed or stressed. and neither the defense or the prosecution objects to a July 3rd meeting, should it be necessary. And they say if they meet on July 3rd, this concern about racketeering conspiracy would be brought back up to the jury at that point. So that's a lot to unpack, but right now...
Not really. I guess it's a lot to unpack when you're in the 24-hour news cycle and you're just trying to fill airtime. But really, what they're all worried about is having the jury rush to a decision when faced with the holiday weekend. I think we're still too far out from that, and they have all day tomorrow to decide on a single charge. Now, if they're hung on just this one charge, maybe they end up dropping it. Maybe they end up, I don't know. We don't really know, because all we really got was mainstream media spin. The thing is, in general, historically, a partial verdict says guilty. If the most serious charge, which practically requires the underlying charges to be guilty, is one that they are deliberating, then he's probably going to be serving time. The only question is if it will be life or just past Viagra age. That's how I feel. I feel like they're not really thinking about charge one if they aren't at least charging him with one of these other ones, which all carry several years in prison. The 2 counts of prostitution, if they only found him guilty on the prostitution and they ignored the trafficking, that may be his only out. The fact that we need to find need to be guilty on 2 or more to bring in the racketeering. But what if those 2 charges are the same thing? That could be it. But I think right now they're at least finding him guilty of at least 1, 2, or more of these charges. So he's definitely not walking away with a not guilty verdict at this point. We'll have to see. I'll be up bright and early tomorrow to break down the news. Make sure you hit subscribe or follow down below, and we'll talk to you again real soon.